Guys, no green screen intro on this one. We are just simply going to look at my favorite blade grinds from top to bottom. This is not blade shapes, so you're going to see some knives that have a blade shape that might be in a different category, but we're going to start with my favorite hollow grinds. Now, there's a couple reasons why I love hollow grinds so much. The first one is you get so much longevity in that blade. As you start sharpening, this blade is going to remain thin, if not thinner, as you sharpen it. So this is my Sabenza. It has a gentle hollow, as does this Solar Storm. So you've got a lot of longevity on sharpening, and this is that Warren tack, really, really thin behind the edge, and it's going to stay that way. Now, the reason being is because you've scooped out that material behind it, and it's going to allow you to have that be thin for a long time. Another reason that I like hollow grinds is it allows you to have a very good behind the edge thickness on some thicker blade stock on a narrow blade. So this is that Solar Storm. It's nice and narrow. It's not a really broad blade. And with the hollow, it accomplishes something that you can't get in, say, the Benchmade 940, which is a narrow blade, thick blade stock. And this will stay that way, like I said, as you do it. Hollow grinds typically are easier to sharpen because you're removing less material, and they're going to cut really well because not only is it thin behind the edge, it stays thin for a while before it starts to ramp up. And that allows you to have a lot of cutting potential in one of these knives. Hollow grinds typically are some of your better slicers on the market. Some people think that behind the edge, they're a little weak. I don't find that to be the case. As a matter of fact, this is one of the thinner knives that I own, and it has held up remarkably well. It also makes the blade light, so you get a lot of weight reduction because you're not just removing material straight down. It's hollowed out a lot like a razor, so you get a very nicely light blade, and it makes the knife a little bit more manageable. So longevity, just cutting potential, and a lot of things. That's why I love them. So with that being said, hollow grinds, let's move on to my next favorite, and it's flat grinds. And flat grinds get you a lot, especially like a full flat. This is a knife that just recently came in that I fell in love with. This is the Revo Knives Ness, the PM2, brilliantly done full flat grind on this, as well as a lot of the other Spyderco knives. You don't necessarily have to have a full flat. If it's done really well, you can get a nice behind the edge thickness. These allow you to cut really well. Here's another really well done flat grind on this. These have a lot of tendency to cut really well because they, unlike the hollow, they're not dipped out. So these slice really well because there's no transition where you come up into the hollow. On a full flat grind, especially, it's ground all the way from the spine down, which gives you a lot of cutting. But you can get a very thin behind the edge on a broad blade with a flat, and it looks really good. It's a nice looking grind aesthetically, but they do perform really well, especially if they're done well like this one, where it comes down on what's not a thick blade stock to begin with, and then comes down to a nice behind the edge profile. They're really robust. They are easy. That's why a lot of knife makers like them. They're an easy grind to do. And a lot of times you're going to find that knife makers gravitate to them because of some of the issues with doing a hollow and things like that. But there is nothing wrong with a really good flat grind. They have a cousin that we're going to talk about later that I'm not as big a fan of in the Saber Grind, but we'll save that one for later. But yeah, these are some of my favorite knives have been in flat grinds. Would I prefer to take a hollow over some of these? I don't think so. On some of these knives, I think it would just be too much. So let's move on to the third grind, which is a compound grind, and they can be done in a bunch of different ways. I forgot to bring this one out. So you can see compound grind, you got two different grinds. That's what I'm talking about, a compound. This one is what they would consider almost a nightmare grind. I used to have a knife that had a true nightmare grind. This is a hollow and a flat, so it's a compound grind. So this gets you kind of the best of both worlds. You have a really robust tip and a nice hollow on that. Same with this one. These are some of my favorite to like aesthetically. These type of grinds right here with a nice hollow and a flat on a drop point, one of the most aesthetically pleasing grinds. But there are also compound grinds on Tontos, like my Norseman here, which has been milled out in a hollow and then has a nice robust flat tip. This, a flat ground tip, I should say. These are all incredible cutters because you've got a nice broad blade. It is really thin. These two right here are actually some of the thinnest behind the edge compound grinds I've ever had on a knife. And they cut really, really well. But then for things that you may want a little bit more meat at the tip, you've got it. Now, this type of compound grind a lot of times is done in an aesthetic fashion where you have a thicker grind at the back and then a thinner grind at the front. This is 100% for aesthetics. This really doesn't serve a purpose, but on some of these other knives, these compound grinds, they actually do. And not only are they really good, it gives you, like I said, that robust tip. It is just a gorgeous way to do a knife. It gives you all these beautiful facets, still really functional. This is one of my favorite knives of all time. This thing is just a beautifully done grind. And recurves are a blade shape, not necessarily a grind, but this adds to the cutting power of this, to have that hollow on that recurve and then a really robust tip, which a lot of people don't understand the Norseman until they've owned one. It is a great, great functional knife. So yeah, compound grinds, really, really cool. After you guys hear from a sponsor, we're going to hear about the next knife grind. Guys, I like to keep these little sponsor ads a little shorter than other channels, but it's kind of hard when you get into the dull strong knife stuff because they have such a broad, wide variety of knives. They have got some of the coolest looking kitchen knives you're going to want to find, but when it comes down to basics, all their knives are super functional. This is their Gladiator 8-inch chef's knife. It is probably one of the best chef's knife I've ever handled, and I've handled a lot of much more expensive ones. So if you want to check them out, support the channel, there's a link down below. It doesn't cost you anything at checkout, but they've been kind enough to provide me with a portion of your orders. So you know you're going to use kitchen knives anyway, you may as well check them out. So now let's turn this around and get back to the video. So this next knife grind is not something I would necessarily want in a folding knife, but for an outdoors knife like this Mora, it's great. This is a Scandy Grind. And so a Scandy Grind basically is a lot like the next one we're going to talk about, which is a Saber. It's basically ground from a point in the transition of the blade all the way down. So it's like a zero grind from here down. Like it comes straight down to the edge. This is a great knife for outdoor purposes because it gives you a nice, super sharp behind the thin behind the edge profile, but still a lot of meat to support it. These are great for a lot of things that you would not be able to do with another knife because you've got a really, really strong spine, super sharp edge. You can baton these through things. You can split with these things. You can actually do like takedown on animals. You can do things that you couldn't do with a regular skinning knife. You can pop this through joints. There are a lot of things you can do with a Scandy Grind, and they are typical on a lot of bushcraft and outdoor knives. I will say these knives cut really well because of that edge profile. If you look at it, it just comes down ridiculously sharp on these, and they have a very robust point because there's no real distal taper on this. This is flat all the way down, and then the edge grinds up. So you've got a really robust tip on this. These are some of the stronger knives you're ever going to find, are things with a Scandy Grind. They're great for a lot of stuff. They're not, I would not say they would be great for like just your everyday carry use in like a pocket knife. So I do love the Moras, and I do love a good Scandy, but it's further down on my list because it's not as useful for me as some of the others. So let's move on to the next one, which is its cousin, and it's the Saber Grind. This is my least favorite. So I was going to throw another one in, but it's actually a blade shape, and that's Tontos. You guys know I'm not a fan of Tontos. But yeah, this is really like my least favorite grind of all the pocket knife, of all the knives grinds that we've talked about so far. And it's because they have a tendency to be really thick behind the edge. Now, this one has been done in a hollow to kind of mitigate that, but it's still really thick. You can tell by my bevel. It's still really thick behind the edge because there's not as much distance. The wider you have area in use, the thinner you wind up behind the edge because you're able to grind away that material more gently. Having a hollow on this is going to allow it to be a little bit better, but they don't typically cut as well because they typically are really thick behind the edge, and the transition's quite abrupt, even on this hollow. And the other issue I have with them is you run into issues as you're sharpening. You really quickly get into some thicker blade stock, especially on ones that have been a flat saber, like a flat ground saber as opposed to this hollow. This was already pretty thick behind the edge. If this was a flat saber grind on this, it would really quickly transition into material that was a lot thicker as you sharpened it. So you just don't have the longevity of a good slicing edge. And since they don't slice as well, that's one of the key things that I'm looking for in a knife. I mean, these are more robust. This is meant for a self-defense tool. So you might wind up doing some prying. Police are maybe going to pry with this on something. So that's who it's designed for, is a first responder's knife. So I understand the use of a saber grind and the thickness you get and the strength you get on it, but they just don't cut the way I would want. And so that's why this one is my least favorite. I don't like Tonto blades. So that one, I was going to throw it in, but you know, I kind of threw that out because it is a blade shape. So guys, let's turn us around. We'll do some final thoughts and I'll send you out about your day.
There you go, guys. I thought that would be fun. I love most of the blade grinds out there. I don't have a problem with grinds, flat grinds, hollow grinds, you know, Scandy grinds, Saber grinds, whatever your favorite is, that's cool. I just thought we would talk about it. Now, as far as aesthetics, I do believe that these compound, you know, hollow and flat grinds on a drop point are just about the most beautiful grinds you're going to find. They just look so good. So with that being said, guys, this was just a lot of fun. I thought maybe you guys would enjoy it. I wanted to do it because, you know, I don't think I've ever filmed this one. We did blade shapes, we never did grinds. So guys, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. You don't like it, give it a thumbs down. You know how that works. Tell me what you don't like. I can't change the content if you don't tell me. I've got sponsors down below. I know I threw an ad in. Two of those sponsors, Coffee Brand Coffee and Tempered Trail, have a discount built in. You click on it, there's 10% off your purchase right there. I also have got a ton of affiliate links down below. All of those support the channel. I have got a coupon code that you can use at Beyond EDC. Saves you 40% right now at Beyond EDC. Rosecraft Blades, 10% off there, and over at Fair and Forge Knife Works. And that coupon code is Crazy Sharp, all one word, all lowercase. Saves you 10% at two of them, 40% at one of them. Check out Beyond EDC. Some really good knives that you can get into cheap. Like I said, the affiliate links are down below. I have got an Amazon store. Take that link, put it through browser, use for any Amazon shopping you're gonna do. Go to the link down below that says join the community. Join that community Discord. It's free. It's open to everyone to join and you can hang out. I try to go in there at least once a day. I also have got a membership where there's a private Discord. I do giveaways. There's exclusive content, and the premium tier, the top tier guys, I have access to a sharpening tutorial series that is behind the paywall. So guys, that's it on this one. I love you all. Keep it clean in the comment section. If it's your birthday, happy birthday, and I'll see you in the next video.